6 years into owning my business, I had a secret. I still wasn't making enough money to pay myself, and on paper, I owned a boutique, but in reality, I was pouring everything I had into keeping it alive. And as an RN, I knew I could go back to work, I could earn a steady paycheck, and hire someone to manage the store, and that seemed like the responsible thing to do. So I did. I found an incredible manager, and for the first time in years, I felt like maybe I could make this work. Then 14 months later, everything unraveled. She accepted a higher paying opportunity and gave her notice. That same week, the caregiver for my children quit without any warning. And in a matter of days, I lost the person running my business and the person helping me care for my family. I remember sitting there thinking, I don't know how I could keep doing this. No one knew how close I really was to closing the doors. And from the outside, everything looked fine. But on the inside, I was overwhelmed, and I was wondering if tenacity had really become stubbornness for me. But here's what this season taught me. Sometimes the biggest breakthrough isn't a record sales month or a new opportunity. Sometimes it's simply deciding not to quit on the day you want to quit the most. Entrepreneurship isn't built on confidence, it is built on courage. And it's one hard decision at a time. If you're in a season where everything feels like it's falling apart, I want you to know something I wish someone had told me. This chapter doesn't have to be the end of your story. Today, I'm going to chat about what 10 years in business has really taught me. Welcome to Worth Building. If you're an entrepreneur or a small business owner or someone who's maybe just dreaming about starting something of your own, you're in the right place. This podcast isn't about overnight success or becoming a millionaire in 6 months. It's about building something that really lasts. 10 years ago, I opened the doors to my business with more questions than answers. And today, after a decade of wins, mistakes, setbacks, I have a ton of lessons that I want to share. So people often ask me how I got into retail. And the truth is, I never planned on owning a boutique. My career started in healthcare. I was a registered nurse, and eventually I became a nurse manager. It was meaningful work. I loved caring for people, and I really loved my job and leading a team. But over time, I just felt an itch that I couldn't really explain. I was not unhappy. I think I was really just restless. Have you ever reached a point in your life where everything looks really great from the outside, but inside you're quietly asking yourself, like, is this all there is? And that's exactly where I was. I knew there was another part of me that wanted to create. I was very creative. So I picked up a camera and I started a wedding photography business. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was creating something instead of simply managing it or managing people. Photography really awakened something in me. It reminded me that creativity doesn't have to just be a hobby, that it was part of who I was. But even then, I still had this feeling that something was next, something was bigger. And then one day, changed everything. I was driving through our downtown when I noticed a sign hanging in the window of an empty storefront, and it just had 2 words on it, for lease. And I don't know why, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. And while most people would have just kept driving, I stopped and I called the number. And looking back, it wasn't the lease that changed my life. It was making that one phone call. Because every life-changing journey begins with just one small decision that doesn't seem life-changing in the moment. I had no business degree. I had no retail experience. And I had absolutely no guarantee that it would work. I just had a feeling that I needed to see where this one phone call might lead. And that little storefront became known as Graced. And that one decision led to another business, Anna and Atticus. And it led to incredible customers, lifelong friendships, and countless lessons, but also challenges that I never could have imagined. And it led to moments where I questioned everything. Moments when I wondered if I should close the doors. Moments when I couldn't pay myself. Moments when I felt completely overwhelmed. And we'll talk about these stories too. Because this podcast isn't about pretending that entrepreneurship is easy. It's about telling the truth and being honest. It's about building businesses that last. And if there's one thing that I've learned over the last decade, it's this. Your life can change because of one small act of courage. Sometimes it's quitting your job. Sometimes it's not raising millions of dollars. And sometimes it's simply making a phone call. Soon I realized that entrepreneurship really isn't about business at all. It's about becoming a different person. It's about being resilient and patient and being confident or building your confidence. And it's about making a million decisions every day and learning to trust yourself, learning to trust your gut. I always remember that the business only grows as much as the owner grows. So today I want to dive into 10 lessons that I've learned over the past 10 years of owning my business. And the very first lesson is that success is going to take much longer than you think. Most people really just quit too early. Most people don't fail because they're not talented enough. They don't fail because they lack good ideas. Many fail because they expect results on a timeline that's simply unrealistic. When we plant a seed, we don't dig it up every few weeks to see why it isn't a tree yet. We have to just let it be. Businesses don't grow that way either. Trust doesn't grow that way. Leadership doesn't grow that way. Neither do people. The businesses we admire today were built through thousands of ordinary days that no one celebrates. The businesses that last aren't built by people who never wanted to quit. They're built by people who decided not to. So let's go into lesson number 2, cash flow. Cash flow matters far more than revenue. So if lesson 1 was about patience, lesson 2 is about reality. And when I first started my business, I thought success was measured by sales. How much revenue do you make in a year? The more revenue we generated, the healthier I assumed the business was. But that's not the whole story. If we had a great Saturday, I felt successful. If we had a record month, I celebrated. Revenue had become my scoreboard. But over time, I learned something every business owner eventually discovers, that revenue and financial health are not the same thing at all. You can have your biggest sales month ever, but you can also still lie awake at night wondering how you are going to pay your bills. This is the reality. It sounds impossible until you've lived it, because revenue is what comes in, but cash flow is what's left over after everything has been paid, after all of your expenses, after rent, after payroll, after inventory, after marketing costs, insurance. The list is endless. Oh, and don't forget taxes and utilities, software, supplies like office supplies. And if you're a product based business, like my business is, inventory, and inventory is going to be one of your biggest costs. Inventory is one of the biggest lessons that I've learned, that when you're selling products, you often pay for inventory months before a customer ever walks through the door. And that means your cash is going to be tied up long before it has the opportunity to get back into your pocket. And if you buy too much inventory, or if you buy the wrong products, or if you have a low or sales slow down, that cash isn't available for anything else. I learned that growing a business isn't just about increasing the sales, but it's also protecting the cash that you have. Because cash really gives you options. Cash lets you invest in marketing. Cash lets you hire great people. Cash lets you weather slow seasons without making emotional decisions. And I've absolutely been there. Cash gives you confidence. One of the biggest mindset shifts I made was realizing my job wasn't to simply grow revenue. My job was to steward the resources my business had been entrusted with. That's a completely different way of thinking. It changes the questions that you ask yourself. Instead of asking, how can I sell more? You begin asking, how can I build a healthier business? Sometimes those answers are the same, but sometimes they aren't. Maybe it means buying less inventory. Maybe it means improving your margins instead of chasing more sales. Maybe it means saying no to an opportunity that would stretch your cash too thin. As entrepreneurs, we're conditioned to celebrate growth, but healthy growth is different than fast growth. Healthy growth is sustainable. Healthy growth allows you to sleep at night. Healthy growth creates opportunity instead of anxiety. And yes, today I still celebrate those great sales days, but I celebrate something else even more important, and that's financial stability. Because I've learned that revenue creates excitement, but cash flow creates peace. And peace is one of the most valuable things that a business can provide for its owner. So here's my encouragement to every entrepreneur listening. Know your numbers, Not because you need to become an accountant, but because understanding finances is one of the greatest acts of leadership you can practice. Your numbers will tell a story. The better you understand that story, the better decisions you'll make for your business, your team, and your future. Cash flow matters more than revenue. Revenue is exciting, cash flow keeps the lights on. Diving into lesson 3, and that is marketing is never finished. And this lesson probably took me years to understand. When I first opened Grace, I thought marketing was something you did to get your business off the ground. You built your website, you create a Facebook page, you run a few ads. I thought if you had great products and you treated your customers well, the business would just take care of itself. But I couldn't have been more wrong about that. One of the biggest surprises of entrepreneurship is that no matter how successful your business becomes, people still have to discover you every single day. Here's something that I remind myself often. There are thousands of people who drive past my store every week who have never walked through the door, and thousands more have no idea my website exists. And even loyal customers need reminders. Life gets busy, people move, their habits change. Now, new competitors might enter the market. You aren't just competing against another boutique, you're competing against distraction. And that's why marketing is never finished. Think about the businesses you admire. Do they stop advertising because they're successful? Do they stop emailing customers? Do they stop telling their story? No. They continue showing up. Not because they're desperate, because they understand something important, that visibility creates opportunity. One of my biggest mindset shifts happened when I stopped asking, what should I post today? And instead, I started asking, how can I serve my customer today? That changed everything. Marketing stopped feeling like self promotion, it became an extension of customer service. Every email, every social media post, every behind the scenes video, every podcast episode, and every conversation is simply another opportunity to help someone discover you, help them to solve a problem, help to inspire confidence, and to remind them that they are not alone. And that's what good marketing really is. It's not about convincing people to buy something that they don't need, it's actually about helping people discover something that genuinely will make their life better. And for me, marketing isn't just about selling clothes. It's helping women feel more confident. It's helping entrepreneurs realize that they're not the only ones struggling. It's sharing lessons that took me years to learn. And when I look at marketing that way, it becomes a privilege instead of a chore. Another lesson I learned the hard way is that marketing works best when sales are already good. That sounds backwards, but it's true. Most business owners start marketing when business slows down, but by then you're already behind. The healthiest businesses market consistently, don't ever stop. And not because they need customers today, but because they're building relationships that will turn into customers tomorrow. Marketing is like planting a garden. You don't plant seeds because you're hungry today. You plant seeds because you know that you will have a harvest later. And the same is true in business. Every email you send, every story you share, every customer that you please and delight, every review you ask for, every relationship that you build, you're planting seeds, and some will grow tomorrow and some will grow for a while. Some will grow for months and some might not grow for years. But if you stop planting those seeds, eventually you'll stop harvesting. That's why I believe that every entrepreneur should become a storyteller. People don't remember advertisements. They remember stories. Stories about why you started, stories about the customers or the customer whose life you impacted, stories about your failures, stories about your mission and your vision for the company. Because while someone else can copy your product, no one else can copy your story. And after 10 years, I've realized something that is super simple, that marketing isn't an event, it's a commitment. It's a commitment to continue to show up, to continue serving, to continue to tell our story, and to continue to earn trust. Because customers can't buy from a business that they've never discovered, and they can't recommend a business that they've forgotten. That's why marketing is never finished. It's simply a part of building something that lasts. All right, lesson 4 is building systems before you actually think that you need them. So if I could go back 10 years and whisper one piece of advice to myself, it would be start documenting everything. When I opened Graced, I didn't have any systems. It was just me. I knew where everything belonged. I knew how every display should look. I knew how to greet the customers. I knew how to help the customers. I knew how to package the orders. I knew how to order inventory and how inventory worked. I knew the answer to every single question. And at the time, it felt efficient because it was just me. So why would I write everything down when I have it all in my head? So why would I create a process when I can just explain it to other people? But as my business started growing and I hired more employees and I added new products and I expanded our operations and eventually I added Anna and Atticus, our clothing brand, I realized that I can't do it alone and everything existed almost entirely inside my head. So every time someone would have a question and they came to me, I would have to go through every decision, walk through every problem, talk through every detail, and I had accidentally built a business that depended on me for everything. It can get really, really exhausting. Freedom for myself. I was just creating dependency in my business. So my team was totally dependent on me because I hadn't put anything down on paper. I couldn't truly lead them and they couldn't really make confident decisions and they couldn't grow because I didn't give them a system to follow. And one of the greatest shifts I made as a business owner was realizing that systems aren't about controlling, it's about giving clarity to your team. So a good system answers questions before someone actually has to ask. It creates consistency, it removes confusion, it gives people confidence. Think about your favorite restaurant. No matter what location you visit, the experience feels familiar. Why? Because they have systems, the same recipes, the same training, the same customer experience. Consistency isn't accidental, it's designed. And I want my customers to feel the same way at one store as they do as another. Customers trust that businesses are consistent, and employees will really thrive when your expectations are clear. Owners experience freedom when their business doesn't depend on them making every single decision. One of the biggest myths entrepreneurs believe is that systems make businesses feel less personal, but I found it to be the opposite. Systems don't replace people, they allow people to do their best work. They free you up to spend less time answering repetitive questions and to give you more time being a leader, more time to serve customers, more time to think about big picture and the future instead of just reacting to the present and putting out fires. So today, whenever I do something more than once, I ask myself, could this become a system? Maybe it's onboarding a new employee, or maybe it's how we process inventory. Maybe it's responding to customer emails. Maybe it's opening the store. It could be that simple. Maybe it's just closing a register at the end of the day. Every time I document a process, I'm making life a little bit easier for my future self and my employees. And that's something every entrepreneur deserves. One of my favorite definitions of a business is this: a business should be able to deliver a consistent experience even when the owner isn't in the room. And that doesn't happen by accident. It happens through systems. It's not complicated systems, just simple, repeatable ways of doing things well. Because here's what I've learned after 10 years. Freedom does not come from working less. Freedom comes from building a business that no longer depends on you to remember everything, to solve everything, to do everything. That's the power of systems. They don't just organize your business. They create the space for it to grow. Moving into lesson 5, one of the biggest misconceptions that people have out there is that you're selling a product. But when you think about it, you're not selling just a product. You are selling something much, much deeper. I have never really been selling products. I've been building trust. So think about it. Every day, people have countless options out there. If someone needs a sweater, they can shop online. They can go to a department store. They can go to the mall. If their mall is still around, they can buy it on Amazon. If someone wants a candle, there are thousands of choices out there. So why would they come to Grace and why would they choose us? And it's not because we're the only option in town. It's because somewhere along the way, they decided that they trust us. Trust isn't built in one moment. It's built in hundreds of small moments over time. It's built when you greet someone with kindness, when you answer an email promptly, when your product is exactly what you promised, and when you admit that you made a mistake instead of making an excuse. A customer will remember that. It's when you recommend something that truly serves them, even if it costs less. It's even though those moments seem small, altogether, they become your reputation. And your reputation is one of the most valuable assets that your business will ever own. I've often thought back to my years as a registered nurse, and patients don't trust me because I have RN after my name. They trust me because of how I cared for them, because I listened to them, because I followed through on what I said I was going to do, and because they believed that I genuinely wanted them to have the best care. And business isn't that different. People don't simply want transactions. They want relationships. They want honesty. They want consistency. And they want to know that when they spend their hard earned money with you, you've earned the right to receive it. One thing I remind my team often is that every customer interaction will either build trust or it will slowly chip away at it. There really isn't much in between. Trust is built when you keep your promises. It's built when you show up consistently. It's built when your actions match your words. And here's something else I've learned. Trust grows slowly, but it can disappear really quickly. One poor experience, one broken promise, one bad day, one careless interaction. That's why protecting your reputation has to become one of the highest priorities in your business. I've also learned that trust is the greatest marketing strategy there is. So when your customers trust you, they come back, they tell their friends, they leave reviews, they recommend your business without being asked at all. They become advocates instead of simply just customers. And that's something no advertisement can ever buy. And here's the really beautiful part. Building trust doesn't require a massive marketing budget. It requires just consistency, that you just keep showing up, integrity, kindness, doing the right thing when no one is watching. And after 10 years, I don't think our greatest asset is really our inventory. It's not our website. It is not our social media following. Our greatest asset is the trust that we've earned one customer at a time because products can be copied and we know multiple businesses can carry the same product. And one business can always be cheaper. But trust is a foundation that allows a business to truly endure. So if you're wondering where to invest your time, invest it in trust because it compounds more than almost anything else in business. And when you build enough trust, customers stop asking, why should I buy from you? And instead, they begin asking, what's new? What do you have? What can I buy? That's when you know you've really built something special. So, lesson 6 is that you can't do everything yourself. Whoa, this one stretched me more than anything else over the past 10 years. I had to learn to let go. But when you start a business, all you have is yourself, and you have no choice but to do everything yourself. It's survival. You answer every email, you clean the floors, you order the inventory, you price it, you run your social media accounts, you're helping the customers, you're balancing books, paying bills, staying late, you come in early, you wear every single hat because you're the only one to wear every single hat. And in the beginning, that is completely normal. That's where everyone starts. But the problem is, many of us never stop. We never get out of that phase. We become so good at doing everything ourselves that we accidentally become the biggest obstacle to our own growth. And I know I did. For a long time, I believed that no one could care about my business the way that I did. And you know what? That's true. No one ever will care about your business the exact same way that you do because it's your dream. It's your risk, your investment, your responsibility. But what I eventually realized is that people don't have to care like you do to make an incredible contribution. And that changed everything for me. One of the hardest decisions I ever made was hiring my first manager. At the time, I still wasn't paying myself from the boutique. So I decided I needed to go back to work as an RN to help my family have more stability. And hiring someone to run the store wasn't just a business decision, it was really an emotional one. I had to trust someone else with something that I had poured my heart and soul into. And she was great. She was wonderful. She cared about our customers. She led our team well. She treated the business with respect. But after about 14 months, she accepted another higher paying opportunity. And that was really difficult. I felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. Like just when things are going great, it's like it all fell apart. And I could have said to myself, see, this is why I do everything myself. But that would have been the wrong way to go. That would have been the wrong lesson. The lesson wasn't that hiring was a mistake. The lesson was that leadership requires courage because people will leave and life will change and employees will grow into new opportunities. That's just part of life. But the answer isn't to just stop trusting people either. The answer is to keep developing them. Because businesses aren't built by one extraordinary person. They're built by ordinary people who work together when there's an extraordinary vision. One of the biggest mind shifts that I had was realizing that my job wasn't to be the hero of the business. My job was to help develop people and help other people succeed. And that's what leadership is all about. It's not about having all the answers, it's about asking really good questions. And it's about creating clarity when others feel uncertain. It's coaching instead of controlling. And it's about helping to give someone else confidence before they have it themselves. And as a nurse manager, I learned something that I carried into my business. And as people rise or fall based on the leadership around them. So when people feel trusted, they take ownership. When they understand the mission, they make better decisions. And when they know that you believe in them, they often begin believing in themselves. That doesn't mean hiring is easy because it absolutely isn't. You will make hiring mistakes. You will trust the wrong person, believe me. You'll have very difficult conversations, and you will wonder if there's anyone out there who can meet your standards. I've experienced all of those things. But I've also experienced something even greater, and that's watching someone discover gifts they didn't know that they had, seeing an employee grow into a confident leader, watching a team serve customers with excellence because they believe in the mission and not because I'm standing right next to them or looking over their shoulder. Those moments remind me that leadership isn't about building a business, it's about building people, it's about building the team. And when you build people well, they help you build a better business. Today, I think differently about success. Success isn't doing everything myself. Success is creating a business where other people can thrive, where customers are cared for, whether I'm there or not, where leaders are developed, where opportunities are created, where the business becomes bigger than one person's abilities. That's the kind of business I want to build, because that's the kind of business that lasts. Lesson 7 is that every mistake is tuition. When I first became a business owner, I thought that successful entrepreneurs made fewer mistakes than everyone else. I imagined that they have much better instincts, that they have better timing, they have better ideas. Then I spent 10 years running my businesses and I realized something completely different. And that's successful entrepreneurs don't avoid mistakes. They learn from their mistakes and they make them faster. If I'm honest, some of the most valuable lessons I've learned came with a price tag. Sometimes that price tag was financial, sometimes it was emotional, and sometimes it was just time. But sometimes it was also my confidence. I've ordered inventory that I thought this is going to sell, customers are going to love it, only to watch it sit on the shelves. And I've made hiring decisions that definitely did not work out. I've delayed difficult conversations longer than I should have. I waited too long to make changes because I hoped things would get better on their own. And every one of those decisions cost me something. And at the time, they did feel like failures. But looking back, I realized they were the tuition. That's how I think about mistakes now. Not as evidence that I shouldn't own a business, that I'm not worthy, but as the price of becoming a better business owner. Think about any profession. Doctors don't become skilled by reading textbooks alone. Pilots don't learn by watching videos, hopefully not. And nurses don't become confident without caring for patients. And experience teaches lessons that information just simply can't. And business is no different. You can read every business book, you can listen to every podcast, you can take every course that's out there, but eventually you're going to have to make the decisions and you have to launch the products. You have to hire the employees. You have to raise the prices, sign the lease. And sometimes you'll get it wrong. You'll make mistakes. And that's not failure. That's just entrepreneurship. One of the biggest mistakes I see entrepreneurs make isn't making mistakes. It's trying so hard to avoid them that they stop taking action altogether. They just freeze. They wait until they have more certainty, until they have more confidence, until they have more information. But rarely certainty comes first. Experience does. I've learned to ask myself a different question. Instead of asking, what if this doesn't work? I ask myself, what will this teach me? That question has changed the way that I lead. Because even when a decision doesn't produce the outcome that I had hoped for, it still produces something really valuable: wisdom, better judgment, stronger instincts, more resilience. Some of the best decisions I make today aren't because I'm naturally gifted at making decisions, it's because I've already made wrong decisions before. Experience has a way of sharpening your perspective. It teaches you what no business book or online course can. It reminds you that success isn't built on perfection, it's built on learning. And after 10 years, I no longer expect myself to avoid every mistake. I fully expect to make mistakes, but I expect to learn from them. And that's much healthier. And it's one that I hope gives you permission to keep moving forward. Because here's the truth: every entrepreneur does pay tuition. Some pay it through courses, some pay it through mentors, some pay it through expensive mistakes, like I have. The question isn't whether you'll pay. The question is whether you'll graduate from the lesson. So don't waste your mistakes. Learn from them. Carry the lesson forward. And remember, every challenge that you overcome today becomes wisdom that you will share with someone else tomorrow. And that's how great businesses and great leaders are built. Okay, so our final lesson, lesson 10, is that the greatest return on investment is really becoming a better leader. So when people ask me the greatest investment I've made over the past 10 years, they might, expect me to talk about inventory or marketing or, the leases I've signed, technology, hiring, or even launching a second brand. But if I'm really being honest, none of those things have produced the greatest return. The greatest investment that I've made has been investing in myself. Because after 10 years of entrepreneurship, I've realized something that I wish I had understood from the beginning, and that your business rarely outgrows its leader. It grows as you grow. When I opened Grace, I thought my job was to build a successful business. And looking back, the business was really quietly building me. It taught me patience. It taught me humility. It taught me resilience. It taught me stewardship. It taught me courage. So many things. It taught me how to make difficult decisions when even I wasn't sure if they were the right ones. And probably most importantly, it taught me how to lead. So leadership wasn't something I mastered overnight. It happened through many, many years, through being a nurse manager, through being in the Navy. But in healthcare, the mission was already clear. But in entrepreneurship, in my own business, I had to create the mission and the vision. And I had to learn how to communicate that and how to inspire people and how to have those really difficult conversations and how to admit when I'm wrong about something. I had to learn how to remain calm when everything around me seemed really uncertain. And none of these things you learn from a book. They really come from experience, and they come from one difficult conversation at a time, one hiring decision, one mistake, one challenge, one ordinary day after another. And I realized something over the years, and that's that every problem that I thought was really a business problem eventually became a leadership opportunity. So if I'm having slow sales, leadership. Difficult employee, it's leadership. Cash flow challenges, it's probably leadership. And customer service issues, also leadership. Growth, leadership. It's all leadership, even marketing. And leadership is influence. So an influence touches that every part of the business. So one question I often ask myself is, who do I need to become for the business that I'm trying to build? Not what strategy do I need or what software should I buy? Those things, they matter, but they usually aren't the limiting factor. Most of the time, I'm the limiting factor. And that's both humbling, but it's also incredibly hopeful, because if I can continue to grow, that means that my business can continue to grow as well. And one of the best investments I've ever made wasn't buying another product. It wasn't reading another book. It was finding a mentor. It was listening to podcasts. It was learning from other entrepreneurs and taking time to think instead of simply just reacting to a situation. Those investments pay dividends long after they're made. And I've also come to believe that leadership isn't about becoming the smartest person in the room. It's about becoming the kind of person that others trust enough to follow and someone who serves first, who listens well, who keeps their promises, who owns their mistakes, and who celebrates others. That's the kind of leader that I hope that I'm becoming, not because leadership is a title, but because leadership is influence. And influence is one of the greatest gifts that we've been given. If my business disappeared tomorrow, the lessons that my business has taught me about leadership, I would still have. And no one can take that away from me. They're a part of who I've become. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts of entrepreneurship. Yes, it builds businesses, but if we let it, it also builds our character. And after 10 years, I no longer believe that success is measured only by revenue or how many locations I have, how many followers on Instagram, or awards I've won. Success is really measured by the person that you're becoming while you're building, because businesses will change, markets will change, products will change. But the leader that you're becoming, that's an investment that compounds for the rest of your life. So if you're listening today, here's my encouragement. Don't just ask how to grow your business, ask how to grow yourself. Read the book, have the difficult conversations, learn the new skills, find the mentor, invest in yourself, become more patient, more courageous, and more intentional with your time, and be more generous. Because when you become a better leader, everything around you begins to improve. Your team, your customers, your family, your community. Leadership is the one investment that impacts every other investment you will ever make. And I think that's one of the greatest lessons, because these last 10 years have taught me so much, but this is the greatest of them all. So, despite learning many lessons over the 10 years, I am definitely still learning. I am still going to be making mistakes. I am still growing. I am still building. And the journey definitely is not finished. And this is why this podcast exists. I want you to ask yourself a few questions about your own business this week. So, here we go. What's one decision that you've been avoiding? What's one system that you could actually improve? And what's one action you can take this week that moves your business forward? Take time to think about it, write the answers down, and act on just one before we have our next episode. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. If this episode encouraged you, I would love for you to subscribe and share it with another entrepreneur who's building something meaningful. And don't forget to subscribe. Next week, we're talking all about the biggest myths in entrepreneurship and why believing these myths keep so many business owners stuck. And remember that the best businesses aren't built overnight. They're built with intention, consistency, and courage. So keep building something worth building. So lesson 8 is really one of my favorites. It's stop comparing your beginning to someone else's middle. Comparison. It just has a quiet way of creeping into every stage of business. We just can't help comparing ourselves. And in the beginning, I remember comparing my boutique to other boutiques that have been in business for decades and wondered, like, why do they have better displays? Why or how do they have such big inventories, stronger sales? And social media makes things just so much worse, right? Because every day we scroll past carefully curated snapshots of someone else's success, about their record breaking sales, their beautiful storefronts, packed events, their new locations, the luxury vacations they're taking. And it's easy to look at those moments and think, why isn't my business doing that? Why aren't I growing like that? But here's what I've learned after 10 years. You're almost never comparing equal chapters. You're comparing your chapter 2 to someone else's chapter 20. You're comparing your ordinary Tuesday to someone else's highlight reel. You're comparing the questions that you're asking today to lessons that someone else learned years ago. And that's never fair. It's not a fair comparison. When I opened Grace, I wasn't competing with businesses that have been serving their communities for 20 years. I was simply trying to become a little better than I had been the week before. And having that mindset changes everything, because the truth is that comparison really just creates discouragement. And progress is what creates momentum in your business. And you can't focus on both. So, one of the biggest shifts I made is defining success differently. And instead of asking, am I as successful as they are? I ask, am I becoming a better version of myself or my business than I was yesterday? And that's something you can actually control. because I can't control anyone else and their revenue, and I can't control their audience, and I can't control their opportunities, but I can control whether I continue to learn and whether I continue serving my customers and whether I continue improving so that over time, those small improvements will compound. Another thing that entrepreneurship has taught me is that every business has struggles that you don't see. And I've had seasons where people have told me, like, oh my gosh, your business is doing so well. And at the same time, I know behind the scenes, I'm not paying myself. But from the outside, everything looked successful. But on the inside, I'm carrying questions that no one else knew about. And that experience changed the way that I look at other businesses. So now instead of assuming someone else's success means they have it all figured out, I assume that they're carrying challenges that I just don't see. And that assumption creates empathy instead of envy. And honestly, it's probably closer to the truth. One of my favorite quotes says, don't compare your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel. You hear that all the time, right? But I think that's especially true in business. The businesses we admire today were built through thousands of ordinary days and thousands of decisions and thousands of mistakes, thousands of moments where someone wondered if they should quit. And you didn't see those parts. So here's my encouragement. If you're just getting started, celebrate people who are further ahead and learn from them. Be inspired by them. But don't measure your own worth against their timeline. Your business has its own story. Your business has its own pace. It has its own timeline, its own purpose. And the goal was never to build someone else's business. The goal is to faithfully build your business. Because at the end of the day, the only business you can improve is the one that you're leading. And that's more than enough to keep you busy. So stop looking sideways, just look forward, look straight ahead, and take the next faithful step. That's how businesses worth building are actually created. And if I had spent the last 10 years trying to become someone else's version of successful, I would have never built Graced. I would have never launched Anna and Atticus. And I certainly wouldn't be sitting here recording this podcast. The most important business I've ever been called to is to build the business that is uniquely mine. Moving into lesson 9 is that you want to build a brand, not just a business. So when I first opened Graced, I thought that my job was to sell gifts and clothing, find great products, price them fairly, get customers in the door, and repeat. And while all of those things are part of business and they matter, they're not what people remember. And over time, I started noticing something. Customers weren't coming back because they needed another sweater. They're coming back because they love how they felt when they walked through our doors. They trusted us. They felt welcomed. They knew we would help them find something that made them feel confident and look pulled together. And they knew we'd be honest too about how it would look. They knew we would remember their name. And I also realized that that completely changed the way I thought about business. It wasn't about building a store. It was about building a brand. And those are two very different things. A business sells products, but a brand stands for something. Your products can and will change, and styles will change over time, and technology will change, and markets will change. But a strong brand gives people a reason to keep choosing you through all of those changes. Just think about the businesses that you love. You probably don't love them because of just one product. You love them because of what they stand for. You trust that they're going to deliver. You know how they're going to make you feel. And that's a brand. One of the biggest mistakes that entrepreneurs make is believing that their product is what makes them different. And it could be true, but almost every product can be copied. Someone can sell a similar t-shirt, a similar candle, a similar service or a course. Someone can even charge less, but they can't copy your story and they can't copy your values. They can't copy the trust you've earned. They can't copy the culture that you've created. They can't copy the way you make people feel. And that's your brand. So when I started Anna and Atticus, I wasn't simply interested in making another clothing line because the world honestly has enough clothing. I wanted to create something that reflected what I believe, which is timeless styles over trendy, quality over quantity, American craftsmanship, pieces that people will still love years from now. And those values became part of the brand, not just the products. The same is true for this podcast. With building isn't about giving business advice. It's about encouraging entrepreneurs to build businesses with purpose, to lead well, and to think about the long term, to become the kind of people who create businesses that truly serve others. That's the brand. The podcast is simply one expression of it. So here's a question every business owner should ask. If someone removed every product you sell tomorrow, what would your business still stand for? Would people know your values? Would they know your mission? Would they know what makes you different than everyone else? Or would you still simply just look like everyone else? That's the difference between a business and a brand. A business competes on products, a brand competes on meaning. One of my favorite things about building a brand is that it gives you a filter for every decision. Should we sell this product? Does it fit the brand? Should we partner with this company? Does it reflect our values? Should we follow this trend? Does it strengthen who we are or does it distract from who we are? And when your brand is clear, decisions become much simpler. Marketing becomes more authentic and customers become much more loyal because consistency builds trust and trust builds brands. And after 10 years, I want Grace to be remembered simply, not to be remembered as simply a boutique, but I want people to remember how they felt when they walked through our doors. I don't want Anna and Atticus to be known simply for beautiful, quality, timeless clothing. I hope people think of us and think thoughtful craftsmanship. I don't want Worth Building to become just another business podcast. I hope it becomes a place where entrepreneurs find honest conversations, practical wisdom, and the encouragement to keep going. Because products eventually wear out, businesses evolve, markets change, but brands become part of people's stories. And when that happens, you've built something that has the opportunity to outlive any single product that you will ever sell. I'm not trying to build businesses that simply make money. I'm trying to build brands that people trust, remember, and recommend. Okay, so our final lesson, lesson 10, is that the greatest return on investment is really becoming a better leader. So when people ask me the greatest investment I've made over the past 10 years, they might, expect me to talk about inventory or marketing or, the leases I've signed, technology, hiring, or even launching a second brand. But if I'm really being honest, none of those things have produced the greatest return. The greatest investment that I've made has been investing in myself. Because after 10 years of entrepreneurship, I've realized something that I wish I had understood from the beginning, and that your business rarely outgrows its leader. It grows as you grow. When I opened Grace, I thought my job was to build a successful business. And looking back, the business was really quietly building me. It taught me patience. It taught me humility. It taught me resilience. It taught me stewardship. It taught me courage. So many things. It taught me how to make difficult decisions when even I wasn't sure if they were the right ones. And probably most importantly, it taught me how to lead. So leadership wasn't something I mastered overnight. It happened through many, many years, through being a nurse manager, through being in the Navy. But in healthcare, the mission was already clear. But in entrepreneurship, in my own business, I had to create the mission and the vision. And I had to learn how to communicate that and how to inspire people and how to have those really difficult conversations and how to admit when I'm wrong about something. I had to learn how to remain calm when everything around me seemed really uncertain. And none of these things you learn from a book. They really come from experience, and they come from one difficult conversation at a time, one hiring decision, one mistake, one challenge, one ordinary day after another. And I realized something over the years, and that's that every problem that I thought was really a business problem eventually became a leadership opportunity. So if I'm having slow sales, leadership. Difficult employee, it's leadership. Cash flow challenges, it's probably leadership. And customer service issues, also leadership. Growth, leadership. It's all leadership, even marketing. And leadership is influence. So an influence touches that every part of the business. So one question I often ask myself is, who do I need to become for the business that I'm trying to build? Not what strategy do I need or what software should I buy? Those things, they matter, but they usually aren't the limiting factor. Most of the time, I'm the limiting factor. And that's both humbling, but it's also incredibly hopeful because if I can continue to grow, that means that my business can continue to grow as well. And one of the best investments I've ever made wasn't buying another product. It wasn't reading another book. It was finding a mentor. It was listening to podcasts. It was learning from other entrepreneurs and taking time to think instead of simply just reacting to a situation. Those investments pay dividends long after they're made. And I've also come to believe that leadership isn't about becoming the smartest person in the room. It's about becoming the kind of person that others trust enough to follow, and someone who serves first, who listens well, who keeps their promises, who owns their mistakes, and who celebrates others. That's the kind of leader that I hope that I'm becoming, not because leadership is a title, but because leadership is influence. And influence is one of the greatest gifts that we've been given. If my business disappeared tomorrow, the lessons that my business has taught me about leadership, I would still have. And no one can take that away from me. They're a part of who I've become. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts of entrepreneurship. Yes, it builds businesses, but if we let it, it also builds our character. And after 10 years, I no longer believe that success is measured only by revenue or how many locations I have, how many followers on Instagram, or awards I've won. Success is really measured by the person that you're becoming while you're building, because businesses will change, markets will change, products will change. But the leader that you're becoming, that's an investment that compounds for the rest of your life. So if you're listening today, here's my encouragement. Don't just ask how to grow your business. Ask how to grow yourself. Read the book. Have the difficult conversations. Learn the new skills. Find the mentor. Invest in yourself. Become more patient, more courageous, and more intentional with your time. And be more generous. Because when you become a better leader, everything around you begins to improve. Your team, your customers, your family, your community. Leadership is the one investment that impacts every other investment you will ever make. And I think that's one of the greatest lessons, because these last 10 years have taught me so much, but this is the greatest of them all. So despite learning many lessons over the 10 years, I am definitely still learning. I am still going to be making mistakes. I am still growing. I am still building. And the journey definitely is not finished. And this is why this podcast exists. I want you to ask yourself a few questions about your own business this week. So here we go. What's one decision that you've been avoiding? What's one system that you could actually improve? And what's one action you can take this week that moves your business forward? Take time to think about it, write the answers down, and act on just one before we have our next episode. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. If this episode encouraged you, I would love for you to subscribe and share it with another entrepreneur who's building something meaningful. And don't forget to subscribe. Next week, we're talking all about the biggest myths in entrepreneurship and why believing these myths keep so many business owners stuck. And remember that the best businesses aren't built overnight. They're built with intention, consistency, and courage. So keep building something worth building.